Hello and welcome to the Everything is Black and White podcast. Time for another episode of In Conversation with Lee Ryder. And we're going to look at Newcastle United's transfer window and the dream scenario that could come once the window closes, once Newcastle United kick off against Southampton. A little heads up, we are recording this on the 20th of June and it won't go out until the following Wednesday. So obviously things could change, but if anything dramatic does change, the episode won't go out. We don't think something's going to rocket so much that we don't have to put it out. Lee, welcome back to the podcast. Transfer window is open. And as always with Newcastle United, plenty of speculation about who could come in, who could go out. And it's something that always catches the imagination of the Newcastle United fans. Before I ask you, about positions and names and links and what have you, just tell me in your opinion how important this transfer window is, given that Newcastle haven't got any European football next season. Just how important is that they have a very successful window this summer?
Yeah, I think we've seen it last season, didn't we? That the squad, unfortunately, couldn't sustain playing in 4 competitions, and I've never seen an injury crisis like it, really, if I'm being honest. And players getting injured, coming back in, getting re-injured, potentially being rushed back in when they weren't ready. Strange calls on some players coming back in, and ultimately, it damaged Newcastle's season. It meant that horrible sort of period in the middle of the season ultimately cost Newcastle a European place, because I think we could all sit and pick games where it all went wrong, but I think between mid-December and the start of February, there was a patch of games where Newcastle lost points, and while they did make the recovery at the end, it wasn't enough because of what came before. So look, I think Eddie Howe knows that he needs players he can rely on, and that's going to be at the top of his wish list, to have players with stamina. I think Anthony Gordon was a great example of that. He fought and fought and fought through the season, barely got injured. And if Newcastle can sign 2 or 3 players that are going to be as strong and sturdy as that, then they've got no issues going forward.
Of course, Eddie Howe will have players returning that he didn't have last season. But given that they haven't got European football in the new season to come, I think the expectation from mostly will be that Newcastle have to qualify for Europe for the season after. And to help Eddie Howe do that, he needs players to come in who will improve the squad and push the squad and give him those tools to really take advantage of not having to play 3 games in a week. How does that expect? I mean, first of all, do you think that is the expectation from most? And will that be, the target set from Eddie Howe, that European football is a must for the season after?
Well, I think that the owners will want European football back as soon as possible. I think they'll be disappointed that Newcastle didn't get it in the end. And the fact that they're only playing in 3 competitions, it's pretty much a clear run at it. And without repeating myself, I think you go back to that summer of 1995 where Newcastle just missed out on Europe under Kevin Keegan, and it actually ended up benefiting them. They put together a league title challenge, which sadly they couldn't see through in 1996, but it showed that if you've got that build up without the distraction of European football, then you can really you can do something special. And I think they've got the opportunity to do that next season now.
Do you think that transfer plans will have changed because of no European football in the new season, or do you think the players that they're targeting would have been the players they were targeting if they had got whatever competition in Europe?
I think when it comes to is your club stronger if you're in Europe? Yeah, it is, because of the financial aspect, and people go, oh, well, it's not that much more you can get from Europe, but it gives you a certain status, and the fact that your club is jetting in and out of European venues makes it a bigger and more attractive club. Is that the be all and end all when it comes to attracting players? Not really, because it comes down to the money. It comes down to wages. Players come to clubs for money, and whether people want to accept that or not, then that's up to them. But for certain players who've got no real affection for Newcastle United, then the attraction is going to be the money, and Newcastle know that they've got the money to offer in terms of wages, but ultimately it makes no difference if that club's in Europe or not, because if they offer the right package, they'll get that player. So it's all about Newcastle really maximising the financial flex that they've got and going from there, really.
And you were over in Australia for that game against Spurs, and then the All Stars, and we've seen obviously the deal with Adidas, and we've seen other commercial deals done and dusted. They'll be off to Japan in the not too distant future. We have seen Newcastle's Peter Silverstone and Darren Eales primarily really grow the club commercially, and we'll start to see the benefit of that, in the not too distant future as well. How important is it that they've started really well, and that all will help Eddie Howe when it comes to reinvesting in the squad, but that they continue on this road where they are growing this revenue, which does help Eddie Howe when it comes to the transfer key.
Yeah, and Newcastle just needs to keep building, really, and that's what the message will be from the club. It's been a good start this summer, as you say. The Adidas deal, the fans getting excited with that. We've all been excited by it. I think really Adidas coming back, and I think now you look at the future. It's about getting off to a good start next season. Hopefully, they can get some good draws in the Carabao Cup, have another cup run in that, and that the new signings that do come in hit the ground running. And if they can avoid 50% of the injuries they did last season, then they're going to be in for a better season. So I'm optimistic at the moment what Newcastle can do. Lloyd Kelly's come through the door, but he needs to be joined by more, because we're looking to, as a football club, we're looking to scare the top four. And at the minute, they haven't signed the players that are going to absolutely shake other clubs to the foundations. And that's what Newcastle need to do this summer. They need to sign a couple of players that are going to really, make other teams look and go, they're going to be a good side next season. And that's where Newcastle need to be. And going back to 1995 again, let's get in the time machine and go back. Look at that summer. They signed Ginola, they signed Les Ferdinand, and those two signings absolutely lit the touch paper, and Newcastle were really on the scene at that point. It'd be great to do something like that again.
It definitely would. But I mean, how easy is it going to be for them to do that? Because I agree with you that, not being in Europe isn't, that detrimental to what they're going to do this summer. But I still think it helps, doesn't it? How easy is it going to be to sign those couple of players, which does really shake those teams above them?
Well, for me, it's going to be about looking at the business you can do, and there's a few players that we know that are possibly assets Newcastle could sell. It's about getting the pieces of the jigsaw right, but ultimately, a popular player's probably going to have to be sold to bring in someone else. I mean, Ivan Toney is a player that is on the brink of leaving Brentford. He's got a proven track record in the Premier League. He knows Newcastle already, having been at the club. It now looks like a bit of a mistake that he was ever sold to begin with, and then let out Newcastle's system. So someone like him, I think, would be a good signing to get fans excited again. That's just my personal opinion. There's a player who has admitted that he looks like he's leaving Brentford, and I think getting somebody of his quality through the door would be a huge statement.
It certainly would be. And I guess on the flip side of that as well, you want to go after the ready-made elite players that can hit the ground running instantly, that are the big names that, fans will want to get the names on the back of the shirt. But at the same time, it's about building a squad as well. And that's going to be key for Eddie Howe going forward, that, okay, he might not be this person arriving, might not be the big name, the big star, but if he can offer something to Eddie Howe and his squad, that's sometimes just as important as buying the big star for a lot of money.
Yeah, it can be deemed that way, but I think when the window shuts, if you look down the list of clubs, they'll all have signed at least one marquee player, and Newcastle will fall behind if they don't do that, unfortunately, because the question is this squad capable of mounting a title challenge at the minute? You'd say it's not, because they're just that little bit short, probably 2 or 3 signings short of being that team that can push those at the very top. That might sound like it's talk of mounting a title challenge, people might say, well, that's a bit early where they are, but they've got to make the most of this situation they're in now. They're not in Europe. They've got a clear run at it between, the start of the season and Christmas. They've pretty much got one game a week. They should be going for it, and they should be taking this as an advantage to really ruffle the feathers of the big guys.
Yeah, it would be wonderful, wouldn't it? And I think that's what a lot of people have said about missing out on Europe, that it does kind of give Newcastle United a really good chance of at least pushing for the top 4, if not a little bit higher. So you mentioned there, Lee, 2 or 3 short. So let me ask you, what positions do you think we're talking about here? Or we know Eddie Howe likes to buy versatile players. So maybe that might come into your answer. But those 2 or 3 that you mentioned, where are we looking at, do you think?
Well, centre forward is right at the top of my list. Bringing in a player that can complement what Newcastle have already got. We've got Alexander Isak. He's brilliant. If he gets injured, though, that's a problem. Could they sign someone who can gel with him in attack and, bring even more from Anthony Gordon? Could they have this fearsome front three? Then I would love to see that. I've mentioned Ivan Toney there. I think he would be a good addition. Then you're probably looking at a winger. I think last season that was probably lacking a little bit, on potentially on the right hand side. Almiron, unfortunately, didn't have a great season really. He showed it in flashes, but he wasn't the player that he was the previous year. So he would be, a player that who could leave. We're not talking about anything too controversial there, because it's been mentioned so much. So I would say a striker, a winger, goalkeeper if Dubravka leaves, and then there's talk of potentially bringing in another centre back. There's been a couple of players linked with Newcastle. I think that would be a wise move, given that Botman and Lascelles are going to be injured until potentially Christmas. So let's see where Newcastle go in the market. I'm sure I know for a fact there's lots of options on the table, but it's just that at the minute they can't afford all of them because of the PSR and the FFP. So it's very difficult this window, but there's certainly business that can be done, and hopefully Eddie Howe gets his wish to do it.
Talk about the goalkeeper situation now. We know Newcastle United are in the hat for James Trafford from Burnley. Not a move that is, supported throughout the fan base, but again, you back Newcastle United in their decision making. As of the 20th of June, Newcastle United have had a bid rejected. Lee, is this one going to get sorted? Is James Trafford going to be a Newcastle United player, do you think?
Well, as it stands today, on June the 20th, a bid has been rejected today. That's what we're being told. So by the time this video is released, then that could have changed. But it's transfer brinkmanship at the moment. That's generally across the board. Bids, counter bids, you name it, you're gonna have it until the club gets value for money. To be fair, I think all Burnley are asking for is to increase the fee to what they paid Manchester City 12 months ago, which was 15 million. So it's got to be a bid worth their while. Otherwise, why would you sell a player at cut cost? So let's see what happens with it. Top young goalkeeper, something that Eddie Howe knows Newcastle need long term. You know, Nick Pope is the number one at the minute, but they need someone to come in and be not just an understudy, someone who's going to challenge him as well, and hopefully get a few games under his belt next season.
Yeah, I think it will end up being a fantastic signing. You mentioned also potentially bringing in another centre back. Obviously, Newcastle missed out on Tosin, who ended up going to Chelsea. I mean, in the days before recording this podcast, a really strange story came out in which Newcastle United were reportedly ready to send Sandro Toney back to AC Milan and get Tamari in his place, which was a bit of a strange one. Just explain that one first and foremost, Lee, and then we'll talk a bit more about, should Newcastle bring in another centre-back?
Yeah, that's what has been reported in Italy. And it's not a surprise that AC Milan still like Tonelli. He's a player who, their fan base absolutely love. People at the club still love him. And the door was never completely shut for him at the San Siro. So it's not a surprise that they've been linked again. It's not a surprise things are leaking out in Italy. It's something that, you've got these daily newspapers over there that are packed with football on the front page. And Tonali is a player that they do still admire, but, they kind of expect to get him on the cheap. It's a very cheeky idea. But Newcastle will want to get value for the £55 million they paid for him last year. And I can't see him going there on any kind of cut price deal. I think Newcastle will want to give Tonali the chance to repay them for what happened last season. Let's not escape that. But at the minute, the fans were still chanting his name, when he was banned. And he's still banned for another 2 games. So let's hope he gets back quickly and hopefully gets the opportunity to show what he really can do for Newcastle.
Yeah, it looks like the first game it'll be available to be picked will be that Spurs game at the end of August. So look forward to seeing Tonali back in the squad if Eddie Howe deems him ready to be picked. I mean, if we're talking centre backs, so Lee, I mean, Tamori is a fine centre back, 26 years of age, played I think 34 times for Milan last season. In the discussion for the England squad, didn't make it, but he would be kind of another statement signing, wouldn't he? If Newcastle, managed to find the cash to bring him in, he would be another top arrival if that was the route Newcastle decided to go down.
Yeah, he'd be a classy addition. I tried to keep an eye on, watching Serie A on weekends, and he was a player that impressed. He's impressed greatly since he's been in Italy, and he'll be a player that would be. He would class him. I personally would class him as a marquee signing, in my opinion. And if Newcastle can get him, then it adds another layer of class to that defence. I'm sure Eddie Howe would take him if he got offered him, and that's the other side of it. When we're talking about, is it a good deal for Newcastle? Well, throw some cash in a swap deal, then it will be one you'd have to consider. But that might break the heart of the people who want to see Tonali succeed at Newcastle. I'm one of them people as well. Seems like a very classy number 6. If you could have both of those players on board, then that would be a deal we'd all be talking about. And then you might be talking about Newcastle pushing for real honours next season. So there's so much that can still happen in this window. There's a lot of moving parts, as there always is in a transfer window. And we wait to see what happens next.
Yeah, we certainly do. We'll just finish off on talking about potential exits, because you mentioned earlier in the show there might have to be one kind of star to go. We know Bruno's release clause runs till the end of the month. Alexander Isak has also been talked about, but both players have come out and said, I'm very happy here. Isak was a little bit more committal. Bruno was a little bit, I don't know what's going to happen, but I am very happy. I mean, first and foremost, when you hear players make those comments, I mean, you've been in the job a long time, Lee. You've probably heard statements from stars like those two countless times. Do you take them at face value?
I just think it's something you can't do. I mean, I've been in situations where, it's breakfast time on deadline day, and by the evening time, that player is wearing the shirt of another club. I've seen situations where the media staff have had players wearing a black and white shirt ready to present them, then something falls through and he goes back to the club that he was at to start with. So much can happen. Sadly, it's not as set in stone as we'd all like to think. Transfers are very fluid. I mean, I remember, I'll just throw one in there. I remember sitting in a hotel in Spain. It was a mid-season sort of training camp for Rafa Benitez. And I sat there and had this wonderful long chat with Mikel Merino about how he was looking forward to the next season and settling in Newcastle. And the next thing, he was sold. And it can happen so quickly. Players can get traded and sold, and it can be very difficult. So you've got to keep a very open mind with transfers. Let's put it that way.
And I guess Newcastle United fans of a certain age will always remember Andy Cole being sold, and that created a massive kick-off. Kevin Keegan on the steps. But football teams sometimes do have to sell their big stars. I mean, we both sit here, Lee, and we both will no doubt be hoping that come the end of the window, Isak and Bruno are still Newcastle United players. But at the same time, we have to prepare ourselves. If it's not this summer, it could be the summer after that. We always have to be ready to accept the fact that a big star could leave Newcastle United.
Yeah, and interestingly, the powers that be at Newcastle have never, ever tried to hide away from that. They've actually said it on the record that every player has a price. Darren Eales has said it. Dan Ashworth said it before him. So I think even Eddie Howe has touched on it. Obviously, he wants to keep his players as long as possible. But Newcastle the communication on that has been very clear, that they might have to sell a player to bring in a couple of other players. And I think, again, it's moving parts. You wouldn't want to sell Isak or Bruno. I think with Bruno, though, the narrative is that it could still happen, whether the clause is there or not. And if it doesn't happen in this window, it might happen in the next window. And we'll have to accept it. I think it would be a real blow if they lost Isak, especially if it was to a Premier League rival. I think we'd all be pretty devastated about that. So I think you could almost live with some players being sold, but losing your star striker like that would be a tough one. And let's hope that that doesn't happen.
Yeah, fingers crossed. I'll just run through a few names and Lee, and just get your brief thoughts on what their future holds. Martin Dubravka, linked to Celtic, currently in the Euros. Will he be a Newcastle United player come the end of the window?
Well, where we're sitting now, it doesn't look like it, because Newcastle are attempting to sign another goalkeeper. So how firm the bid is from Celtic, I've been told there is no bid on the table at the minute. It's talk, but it would be a good destination for him to go and win some medals. We wanted him to win medals here at Newcastle, but the short-term prospect for him is that he's going to be on the bench. So going to Celtic would give him the chance to finish his career with some trophies.
Kieran Trippier, currently on international duty with England. Lots of speculation about his future. Will he still be a Newcastle player come the end of the window, do you think?
Again, it's moving parts. He was subject to a genuine offer from Bayern Munich. News that we broke on this website, Bayern Munich had come in for him. and Newcastle have got Tino Livramento there who can be the first choice right back. So I don't think Eddie Howe will want to sign him. If Eddie Howe has his way, then Kieran Trippier will be here at the start of the season.
Callum Wilson. Now, he's always kind of near the top of the list in recent months when people talked about pushing someone through the exit door. His injuries have probably accelerated that viewpoint. Seem to be interest from the Middle East. No talk of a Premier League team coming in for him, but probably given those injuries, given his age, if Newcastle can get 10, 12, 15 million for him, I think a few people would be tempted to sell. The only question would be how much it would cost to replace someone of his ability. What does the future hold for Callum Wilson, do you think?
Well, in answer to your first question, it would cost you a lot of money to replace somebody like him because he's got that goals guarantee. And I take on board what you're saying about his injuries, but whenever he's fit, he usually scores, and that you can't buy that. So I'd be disappointed if he left, because I do think he's been a reliable player for Newcastle when he's been fit. But ultimately, the injuries have, caused conversations for people. But the top four finish season, you can't argue with that. I think he got 18 goals, so there was no big question on fitness in that season. So for me, he's Newcastle's number 9, and if he's going to go for the type of figures you're talking about, then I think again Eddie Howe will want to keep him, because what's £12 million versus potentially 15 goals if you can keep him fit? It's a drop in the ocean. So unless you're bringing in a completely proven goal scorer, then it'd be very disappointing from a football point of view to sell him. From a business point of view, I guess, the people upstairs, then they would probably see that as a good deal.
Yeah, one to watch. And we'll finish the episode by talking about Miguel Almiron. For most people, the biggest asset that Newcastle United can sell without kicking up too much of a fuss. He kind of reverted to type last season after a storming season, helping Newcastle finish 4th, where he scored, I think it was 11 goals. Absolutely tremendous. Without him, Newcastle wouldn't have got Champions League football. Is he on his way out? Will he still be a Newcastle player come the end of the window, do you think?
I think at the minute, Almiron's probably the player that you would say Newcastle are fully open to business for. He's looked at by a lot of fans as a bit of a hero, given what he's proved he can do in the last 5 years. But again, he's not going to be guaranteed an opportunity. So if Newcastle can't get a big fee for him, then I think he would go. And I think he's coming around to the idea now that he may be sold. But he deserves a good move. Would he get a Premier League club? He's never going to get a club as big as Newcastle again in the Premier League, sadly. So that'll be disappointing for him. But ultimately, every player has to leave at some point. The party has to come to an end. And for him, it might be in this window.
Yeah, Newcastle United looking potentially to get the best value out of him. Final question then, Lee. I want you to name your dream arrivals this summer. Realistic ones. We're not talking about Haaland or whoever. We're talking about realistic arrivals. No problem with the price, no problem with the wage packet. You name them. They're here in black and white.
Yeah, well, it'll be 3 players that we've discussed in this window, and you're asking me to be realistic. I don't think I'm being too outrageous to say you'd go for Ivan Toney if you could get him in. And then, Tomori from AC Milan, if he's available, he's going to make Newcastle a better team. So if you could sign those players in this window, suddenly you'd feel Newcastle could really challenge next season for something big. If they can get some quality on a similar level, then they've got every chance.